Today is Wednesday, March 10th, 2010. Today we're interviewing Jim Kinder, Ann Kinder, and Pam Kalka with the Jim and Ann Kinder Farm. We're in Carney, Oklahoma. This interview is part of the Oklahoma Centennial Farm Families Oral History Project. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, let's begin. Tell us a little bit about how your family came to Oklahoma.
Well, they lived in southwest part of Missouri, and their land flooded in the rainy season. So they needed to get out of the flooding areas, so they hunted the highest place in Oklahoma, which is a divide here. So that's why they settled in this area.
And they came for the land run?
Yes.
My grandfather did. And actually the water where we're living here in this house, this water runs to the Cimarron, this water runs to the Deep Fork.
So they were really thinking about water when they settled.
Yes, getting out of they hated lowlands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they settled in this area.
They could have settled
The
next to the
poorest-
river. North of us, but no.
The poorest hills in Oklahoma.
And what were their profession before moving to Oklahoma?
They farmed, and my grandpa traded horses.
Okay. And tell us, do you know of any details of the original farm? Any original structures?
Yes.
The old house site, the old barn site was there when I was a kid. They had quit using them. The barn was in bad repair, fell in, the house fell in. So I was very interested in getting started in the dozer business. So I dug a hole and buried all of it. And there was a cellar there that was very interesting that my grandmother used. Some of her old bottles were there, jars that she would can, and she would store the jars in the cellar. They were still there.
And when they settled the land, what was the first structure they built?
A log house, 16 by 18.
And how many people were in the family back then?
The parents and 3 children.
Okay.
And then they built that in 1892. And then in 1900, they built a frame house. That was a log house. Then they built a frame house, and it was 16 by 26.
And I thought it was very interesting. The boys all slept in the barn. And so, you didn't know that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. You acted like
That's
But
on my note that you can't read.
But it was later,
Yeah.
because they had several children. And later the house was full, and so the older boys had to sleep out in the barn.
I just thought that was interesting.
Must have been cold out there.
Sure.
There you go.
And then one of the oldest boys was your granddad, right?
Yes.
Was he
No.
the old?
No,
One
no,
was
no,
your
that
dad,
was
my granddad.
Yeah, my
Your
dad.
dad.
Yeah.
One of the boys that slept in the barn. So when his mama said, "What, you born in a barn?" He really was.
But they also had a log stable, a hen house, a corn crib, and the cave that he was telling you about, the cellar. And they had a well, they had an orchard, and they had 50 or 60 acres that was fenced, and between 45 and 60 that was cultivated.
And what type of crops and livestock?
Well, a lot of Capricorn for some reason. And you know, I don't know about the cows. They had milk cows is the only thing I really know. But my grandpa was a big horse trader. They had lots of horses. And so I know more about the horse trading than I do the farming. From what I was
And
told.
what did he do on Saturday afternoons? You told me a while ago what he did.
He raced horse. He had a race horse. And it was a good one. I mean, he won supposedly the race at Tryon. They would race Tryon every Saturday. Then when the county fair, he went to the county fair and won the county. And so,
But no gambling.
no gambling, no drinking except moonshine.
Because that didn't really count.
Not really.
Did y'all talk about him? I'm sorry, I stepped away, but did y'all talk about him leaving leaving the wife and kids for a week or so to
No.
go trade his horses?
No, but
He'd gather horses. And,
yes, and then he would take them back to Missouri, where they came from, and stay gone till he had the horses all gone, except one to ride home.
Really?
But he'd come back here then and gather them up, and
and then he'd take a whole
Go
string of
again.
them and go.
So that's one way you were able to bring in some income into the family.
Yes.
What were some other ways with the crops? How would they get to market? Where would they go?
they would feed what they grew at that time to their cattle, and for Capricorn, reason they would use Capricorn, there was grain which would make milk, and they could sell cream at that time, and you know I never heard a word about chickens, but I'm sure they had chickens.
Well, they had
Oh,
a hen house, so
yeah.
I hope they had chickens in it.
So yeah, and some of this stuff was before my time. So.
Sure.
And,
So when they sold the cream, what did they? Was it in town, or would neighbors come by for it?
no,
or
they'd take it to town.
up to Tryon.
Yes, to try it.
And then too, the train came through Tryon at that time,
Right,
and you
it
had
did.
a couple of, you know, what do you do with cotton gins?
Yeah,
you had
they,
gin.
they did. That was something else. They did raise cotton. I forgot, and they could sell it.
And did they pick it themselves, or did they have outside help?
They picked it themselves.
Okay, that's hard work.
That's how
Yes,
come
it
they had
was.
so many kids.
Yeah.
We need more labor. Gotta do what you gotta do. Did you ever pick cotton?
A little bit.
Did you?
Yeah.
And you said that wasn't for me.
No.
That's hard.
I know it. It's
I've never done it. I've
back-breaking.
never done it. I've
It
just
is.
always
Have
heard
you
it
ever
talking.
tried it?
No.
Okay. I don't recommend it.
And you picked some cotton too, didn't you? Have
Yes.
you picked it? Oh.
Yes, but I live further east here. I live about 4 or 5 miles east.
It still counts as cotton.
Well,
Cotton
right,
picking.
but I just meant I wasn't around here at that time.
So what happened to the farm? You have the 3 boys, got a lot of kids.
Yes.
Tell me about the evolution of the farm.
Okay. The youngest son ended up buying the farm of William Kinder's son, who was my Uncle Ralph. And he had it for years and years and years. Then we bought it.
You and Mom.
So it's only changed hands a couple of times.
Right. That's all.
Wow.
And something real interesting about the old farm, the marked stone is still in the corner of the property when it was the original survey.
When the surveyors came out and marked it,
Yes.
they used rock. They
Yes.
used a big old rock.
And put a mark in it, and I know where it's at. Okay.
So once the farm came into the next generation's possession, tell me about the operation. What was going on there before you got it?
Well, my uncle that bought the farm from my grandpa didn't do anything with it. He just let it sit there mainly. And he lived in California actually. But
Grew
he
quite a
owned-
cedar crop.
Oh yeah, grew lots
Lot of
of
red
healthy
cedars.
cedars, lots of cedars.
Got pretty overgrown.
But
Wow. So it was just sitting there?
yes, he would lease it to someone to run cattle,
Okay.
and then we leased it, and that's when we ended up buying it.
So tell me about the property today.
Well, we've done a lot of conservation on it, taken off lots and lots of cedars, put a nice pond on it, which it didn't have. It did have a spring from day one. That's about mainly we run cattle on it. It does grow lots of grass. When they did raise cotton and the feed on it, they did not protect the land from eroding and washing. We fixed the erosions on it
Put in some terraces.
and terraced it, and like I say, we've got it all in grass now. So
And what year did you purchase that farm?
Well, that's a tricky question. It was about 82, 84, somewhere in there.
I would say around 80, yeah,
I was in
early
high
80s.
school.
Wasn't it?
And we owned the dozer service, and so we have sold some shale off of the place to build roads and locations and stuff.
All the
like
red
that.
dirt that Mom griped about when we were kids actually became valuable in the oil field at one point.
It was,
That's true.
It's real compactable.
It's been
Excellent.
real good to us with the shale pit.
And how did you discover that?
Well, it's just an old poor rocky hill, and the oil field needed some lease roads built, and the engineer that worked for the oil field asked me if I knew where he could get some rocky dirt, and I said, absolutely. And so we went over and started digging on it a little bit. He said, I believe that'll work. I said, I do too. So we were in business. This was, actually, we had to buy that in the late 70s, because this was the early 80s when this started. I remember that. It was, so that's how it came into being.
Well, let's get back to your father, because your father grew up on the original farm.
Yes,
What did he end up doing?
farming,
Okay, and in Oklahoma?
yes, yes.
Whereabouts?
About a 3/4, well, it corners us right here, but it's
Within
half
a couple of
mile.
miles
Yeah.
of the homestead.
Okay. So when you're growing up, you probably had lots of chores to do.
Absolutely.
What type of chores did you do?
Well, we milked cows by hand. We had to cut the ice when it froze in the wintertime. Had to carry in water to the house. And that was part of my chores after school, was to keep fresh water in the water bucket.
And Jim, being the way he is, when he cuts the ice, he goes ahead and slides into the pond. Now, we're just lucky he's here. How they got him back up through that hole in the pond through the ice, I don't know.
Yeah, that was one of my childhood experiences.
Hmm.
My dad broke his arm when I was a little kid. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And at that particular time, he broke both bones in his arm. So instead of setting the bone at that time, he was in the hospital for 6 weeks. And we had a winter about like this past winter.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother and I milked approximately, I couldn't tell you, but probably 10 cows, and by hand. And we would get up and I'd help her milk cows before I went to school. And then of an evening, it was my job to go over and cut the ice. And she'd usually go with me. But I was always in a hurry. I wanted to get over there and get it done. So that's what happened in the ice. I decided I could just kick the ice and bust it in. Instead of that day, it wasn't froze very thick. So I was kicking it, and for some reason my other foot slipped, and I kind of went under the ice a little.
Yeah.
And it's a 1/4 mile from the house. That's cold.
So you got yourself out? Did you have to? You were by yourself that time?
Yeah, well, Granny
his
was
first
coming.
one?
My mother, I called her Granny, but she was coming, but I was out before she got there. So I didn't worry her a whole lot, you know. But that was part of my childhood, early childhood, I remember. And my dad was, he grew up in hard times, so when it rained, we did not get the car out of the garage. We did have a car. I don't know how they operated without a pickup or a truck, but we had a car. So, but we didn't get it out of the garage if it rained. So if any school activities went on, I walked to the school activities down the railroad. I was in the 3rd grade, and we had a special program one night, and I needed to be in it. And I went by myself that particular time. I went before dark to the school, but it got dark, and there's one place you come through the old railroad, and there's a cut there. You never heard the kind of noises I've heard in my life. I can still hear them, you know. It was unreal, some of the things you could hear, and you could make pretty good time getting home that way. But we had to walk if we went anywhere when it rained. I mean, the roads are bad now, but then we could have probably got out, but my dad just wouldn't do it. He just wasn't going to get his car dirty.
What type of car did he have?
Well, the first one I remember, that's another story. You know, was a 38 Ford 4-door, but it had I remember one of the first memories I have when I was a little kid. I was probably 5 years old. We had to haul ice. We didn't have electricity, so we'd go to town and get ice, and it rotted the floor out in that car between the seats where they hauled the ice. And I thought one time I was sitting in that back seat, and I thought, dog, I'm going to fall right out of that hole, you know.
Had a little Flintstone thing
Of
going
course,
on.
it was probably a hole that big, but you could see through it. But I can remember that real well too. That it was really scary. I thought, you know, I'll just fall out of there.
Didn't the Flintstones have a car like that?
Oh yeah.
Grandpa wasn't much of a driver anyway. He didn't drive well. He didn't drive often, but he didn't drive well. And Dad, I don't remember this happening. I just remember the story. Dad did a lot of contract farming when I was real little, or maybe just before. And Grandpa was doing some farming for him, helping him out. Dad needed somebody to come and rake hay that he had cut. And he took my grandpa over with him, and he put him on the tractor and got him started. And he started around the field with that hay rake, and it was kind of rough and came off of the hitch. Is that right?
Pan bounced out.
The hay rake came apart from the tractor. My granddad never looked back. He just kept going around a big old field, and so he's making a big old circle. Well, Dad was on the other side just waving at him, and Grandpa just waved back. And
He just kept going, yeah.
when he got around to that rake, I guess is when he finally
He went all the way
discovered he
around.
missed it. Stopped and hooked on the rake.
He was hard of hearing as I am. The
maybe
noise
even
of the
more
rake
hard-headed.
didn't bother him, so.
So, do you recall the first time you ever drove a tractor?
Oh,
There's
pretty
another
close,
story.
pretty close. I was pretty small when we had a tractor. Actually, I can remember trading the horses for the first tractor, and I was probably too small to be driving. I was probably 8 years old, maybe 10. I don't remember the actual age. But the railroad ran through our property, so we were gonna go over and work the field after a rain. And the way that you come around into the road is coming up a hill, and then you turn across the railroad. Well, I rode over there with my dad, and he was gonna look at something else. It was too wet to work. So he was gonna walk on up the field, look at something else. So I said, well, can I drive a tractor now? Well, yeah, that's the first time I remember ever driving it by myself. So here I go, I start up this hill with a tractor. The governor opens if you start up the hill, especially if you're in a little bit too high of a gear. Well, I made it fine, that wasn't a big problem. I turned across the railroad, and there was a train. And I was too little to really reach the clutch and too scared. So I did have enough sense to turn the wheel and drive off of the bank there, and got the tractor stuck. I did kind of get in trouble for getting the tractor stuck. It wasn't missing the train, it was getting the tractor stuck that I got in trouble for. But it didn't hit me. And my mother was at the house, she thought it probably hit me. She saw it happening, but that was kind of a scary experience.
But I gotta say, you've improved a little bit since then.
Not much, but a little, yeah.
It's still a little iffy when we see him on the tractor. We get a little nervous.
Well, going back to cutting ice as a little boy, or gathering the ice, you said you kicked it, but what if it was too thick? How would you gather the ice?
Well, we'd take an axe and cut a hole for the cows to drink in the pond.
Okay.
That was a lot better than carrying it out of the water, pumping
Okay.
it from the pump. So 10 cows drinks a lot of water,
They didn't actually gather the ice.
No,
they just cut a hole.
we
in it.
just cut a hole in it so
Okay.
they
The
could.
ice that they hauled in the car, they went to town and get to keep things cold.
There used to be an ice house at the grocery store, and you could buy ice year round.
To refrigerate your stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So, growing up, did you have electricity right away?
No, I was a big old kid. I don't know how old I was exactly. Probably.
I was 12, and I think you probably got it the same time
About
we
the same,
did.
yeah,
And
She's a little older than I am, but that's beside the point. But I was a big old kid when I.
You might want to turn those cameras and things off, because
Okay, family violence.
You
is
will be able to
frowned on in
edit.
video.
okay.
But I was a big kid, and of course we had an outhouse at that time, and I remember getting electricity. And the guy that came and wired our house was the tallest, skinniest man I probably ever saw in my life. But that's who would get up. The old attic in the old house we had didn't have that much room in it, but he'd get up and crawl and run those wires back down. I don't know how he did it, but they got it wired. Had two lights upstairs and one light in each room, and tried to get a plug in every room at that time. So then we got to build bathrooms, and onto the house. So that's first bath I ever had in my life.
And was it the last?
Just about.
So before that, surely your mother made you jump in what number tub?
What is it? Big old We had a double tub.
Oh yeah?
I don't know what number it was, but it was a double tub that we'd get in. And there was something else. See, I was kind of a happen along. My older brother was quite a bit older than me. Actually, my youngest older brother was 10 years older than me, but my brother older than him was 2 or 3 years older than him. First bath I probably ever remember taking was, I was about 4 or 5 years old then, but I'd probably had 1 or 2 before that.
I would think.
But anyhow, my dadgum older brother brought the itch
I'm sorry
home
to ask.
from somewhere. And they put something in that bath water. When you'd take a bath, it would just burn you up. But it got rid of the itch. But it would hurt you.
So that was memorable. You remember that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We would take a bath in the kitchen. We'd heat water on the stove and then put it in the tub. And everybody'd take a bath in the same water. So I'm usually lucky enough to get to be first.
How'd you get the honor?
I was the littlest. I
Ah.
screamed the
And
loudest.
everybody else was grown. All the brothers and sisters were gone.
How many siblings did you have?
2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay. Okay. And during this whole time, would you ever go see Grandpa and Grandma?
Yeah. Well, my grandpa moved to Chandler about the time I can remember, and we'd go, once a month to go see him probably.
Okay.
He was old then,
Yeah.
but I can remember, if you want to hear something about him, I always remember he had a little old pistol. I always wanted that little old pistol, but I never did get it. But he had a little pistol he carried all the time. And he was a good shot with it. It was a 22 pistol, single shot. But he always carried it. He'd probably get in a little trouble now. He always didn't like rules any better than I did. So.
Well, did you ever get the pistol?
No, I didn't.
No?
No, I got to shoot it when we'd go see him
Oh.
in Chandler. We'd shoot down.
Do you know where it ended up?
I really don't know. I know where the family Bible is, but I don't know where the pistol went. And
What about your
guessing-
grandma? What do you remember about her?
About what?
Your grandma.
She died before I can remember. Really.
And she was the one who was 100% Indian.
Yes.
100%.
100%. Every bit of her.
She really was.
She's where we got our nose.
She was a Cherokee Indian, and the Indians disowned her when she married my grandpa. Of course, I don't think the white people liked her real well either.
I left her out in the cold.
Well, how did they meet?
I really don't know. Do you remember?
I always tell people that he won her in a horse race just because it sounds really cool about him.
I really. He was probably. I think didn't she come from El Dorado, Kansas? And I wouldn't doubt he wasn't up there trading horses and met her there, I imagine. But I don't know that.
I like the horse race story a lot better myself.
But he was really quite a horse
Just
trader,
saying.
really. I mean, he traded lots and lots. And he really did have some good race horses.
It seems very lucrative for that time.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, well, you could probably get in a lot of trouble also.
Yeah. He was a real old cowboy. Supposedly, I have no proof of it. He did ride with Pistol Pete for a while. They were buddies. And I have no reason to doubt it, but that was one of the stories I've been told, that they were good buddies and they rode together a lot. And
Okay, one of my favorite stories up at the old home place. Have you already talked about Everett and I?
Nope.
no,
Okay, that's one of my personal favorites. This would be my grandpa's brother and sister, right?
yes.
Right.
Okay, one of the brothers was going to shoot his other brother, and the sister jumped between them at the last minute, and he shot her arm off. The time I met my aunt, she was already missing an arm. Just a little bit of family violence there. I don't know why I enjoy violence. Can you imagine your mama coming out? My mom used to say she was going to yank my arm off and beat me with the bloody stump, and I figured whenever she came out of the house and saw whatever it had done to Ide, she probably wanted to.
That must have been one family argument.
You know it. Ide was about 7 years old or so. How old were the boys? Who was he trying to shoot?
I
one of the
don't
brothers?
remember. I think Tom, but I'm not sure. But I'm not positive of that.
I never met Uncle Everett. I've always suspected that his mother beat him to death, but I don't know.
He lived in California.
That's what y'all always told me.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a little off the subject. My bad.
These are some pretty wild stories. Huh?
That's
great.
what you wanted,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
hey.
Well, I would get back to before electricity came, how did they heat the house?
No, really, well, we heated with wood and cooked with wood when I can first remember. And then, shoot, we were some of the really people we got butane. It wasn't propane. You had to bury it, and because it would freeze if you didn't put it below the top of the ground. And so we dug the biggest old pit out there in the front yard and put a butane tank. It's still there, actually.
Did you dig
It's
it by
full of
hand?
water.
Did you just shovel dig it?
Yes. Oh, yes. There wasn't a backhoe then. But dug it with a shovel and buried the butane line approximately 3 feet deep, all the way around the house. And that when we got that, we got, of course, a butane stove to heat the house and a butane stove to cook with and a butane icebox. So we were really uptown, and that was before electricity, quite a bit.
The place that he grew up on is about 10 years or so away from the Centennial time. His mom and dad owned that place, and then we bought it from them. And I know that Dad had it before 1923. I haven't looked up the records on it, but they got married in 23, and Dad already had it and had been living there a while. So, and I'm not really sure just when he got the farm, but we're nearly to 100 years on that one.
When was World War I over?
Is this a trick question?
Yeah.
I came unprepared.
Sometime in the early 20s, but I don't know.
But
It is
anyhow,
early
he
20s,
was
but I don't
in
know.
he was in the war and came home and bought the place.
Actually,
Did he have
Jim,
it before he
had
went?
He had the place already.
Okay, all right. But that had some bearing on
So there
time.
was the original property 160 acres? Or
Yes.
Are we talking about the Centennial one now? Yes, it was 160 acres, and there's 120 of it now, and we're hoping to get the other 60 back again. But we've got the property out around it, so we've got a lot of that. We don't have that 60 right there though.
But we actually had the
I don't
full
mind it.
160, to make a long story short. We got broke and had a chance to sell 40 of it, so that's why it's not in there now. So we'd like to get it back, but I don't know if we can or not.
Well, it seems to go in cycles, you
Yes.
know, just a matter of time, really.
Yeah. But poor people have poor ways. So.
We should know.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's,
Whenever I was born at Grandma and Grandpa's house, Dad's dad and Mom, they still had an outhouse. They had put indoor plumbing by then, but they still had an outhouse, and we were fascinated to get to go outside at an outhouse. Can you even imagine? I don't know why we thought that was marvelous, but we did. And you could hand pump your water. They still had the old hand pump.
Do they still keep a catalog out there for old time's sake?
Sears Roebuck. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right behind the in-house.
Jim's grandma and grandpa are buried a mile north and about, a mile and a half?
well, you know,
West
did
of-
you know that 105 and 177?
Four
The
corners?
intersection, yes. Just a quarter of a mile east on the north side,
On the
there's a
north side.
cemetery there where they're buried.
And the story that Pam likes so well about the aunt that lost her arm, they buried her arm out there on the top of the grave.
Actually, that's my
That's the
great-grandparents.
great-grandpa.
And my grandparents are at Carney.
Oh, I thought they, sorry.
Okay.
Erase.
It's still
but
funny that they buried the arm.
They did bury
That
her
cracks me
arm
up.
there with my great-grandparents.
I don't know why I find
Yeah,
that
yeah,
story
that's
so
right.
funny. Growing up with
That's
brothers and sisters, I think, just the arguing back and forth. I still can't imagine grabbing a gun and think, I'll just shoot my brother. It's funny.
Did your dad end up going to school
No.
at all?
As far as I know, he might have, because he knew how to read and write, but I don't know anything about his education really. As far as I know, those kids went maybe to the 8th grade, and I think he did. I believe they all did. But after that, I think that was it.
And when you started going to school, what was the name of your school?
I went to Carney.
Okay. And at that time, how big was it?
There was like 15 kids in my class, and there was all 12 grades at Carney at that time, and we were an average class, so whatever 15 times 12 would be real close. I don't know exactly. But there was 2 rooms total for the high school. That was in the upstairs of the old schoolhouse. There was 4 rooms downstairs where we went to school, and that was the total of the schoolhouse. And the old schoolhouse did have a fire escape, so all kids loved to play in the fire escape from one of the rooms upstairs. And we were not allowed to go upstairs, so we'd climb the fireplace backwards and slide back there. That was our entertainment, you know.
Until they
Before
got caught.
slides.
Yeah.
Now, did your older brothers and sisters, didn't they start over here at the Red Mound
Yes.
School?
Pam lives a mile west from right here, and there was a Red Mound School right there, and that's where all my brothers and sisters started school. I actually got all the schooling, graduated.
Yeah, he went to Carney to graduate,
Yes, yes.
but that's where they all started.
But
Was
they
it like
all
a one-room
started-
type schoolhouse, or
It
what
was
was
one-room
It was
school,
gone before it
yes.
came along.
Okay. So, you mentioned on the old home place, the original 160,
Uh-huh.
that, you got interested in bulldozing and you bulldozed a couple of the buildings down.
Yeah.
How'd you get interested in bulldozing?
Well, the old banker at Tryon was my grandfather's banker, and we were just friends. So I'd go in here, and he was going to repossess a bulldozer, and I was 19 or 20 years old. He said, "You really ought to go buy that bulldozer." I said, "I don't have any money." He said, "Well, I will finance it for you. You just go get it. Tell the guy you'll buy it. Make a deal for it." And of course, I didn't know what I was looking for. I never drove a bulldozer before in my life. So I'd go look at it, and he showed me how to start it, how to drive it, and I didn't know what to look at on the wear points. So it was in Tryon. So I went ahead and bought the silly thing, but I couldn't drive it home. You had to back it because the tracks would stay on going backwards, but they were so wore out, they would run off the dozer going forwards. And this is what got me into bulldozing, but it was fun. You would run it maybe an hour and work on it 2 or 3 days to make it run again. But it was a great education. I mean, it's probably equivalent to a 4-year college course, I would say, But it was really an exciting time, but it got me started. And this was about the time we got married, and so actually the assistant banker, he was a cashier at the bank, he gave me a job to do on the way home to buy, so I could buy fuel and have enough money to get the dozer home with. And so that's how we got started in that.
Well, I'm jumping ahead, but you mentioned it. I have to know how you met your wife. Now you're on the spot.
Oh, well, would you believe it, a drive-in movie theater?
Where at? In Carney?
Cushing, Oklahoma.
In Cushing?
Yeah.
What were you doing in Cushing?
Oh, that was a drive-in that we could get in the trunk of the car and
Jim, my goodness,
No.
down details.
actually, this other friend of mine said, just one night, said, "Let's go to movies." And that was the closest movie around. And you could probably get in for like 50 cents. So we probably had $1 between us. So I think there was 3 of us went to the movies. And she had money, she had a car, and she had a carload of kids with her. I think they snuck into the show, but that's beside the point. But that's where I met her.
He's kidding about the money. I did have a car.
You had a job.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had an off-farm
Yeah.
job,
She had an off-farm job, so
which was a big deal.
I graduated at Agra, and it's actually about 4 or 5 miles straight through the country here to where I grew up. But I didn't meet Jim until we were grown. So
I knew her uncle, in fact, 2 or 3 of her uncles, but we'd never met. I didn't know her family ever,
See,
but we met at that drive-in.
you were raised on a farm,
yes,
and how did you get an off-farm job? Well, what did you do?
I kept books for a furniture company.
Okay.
And I did whatever they needed me to do at the store actually, but mostly I kept the books and I waited on customers if the other people were busy and that kind of thing.
And that was in Cushing,
Actually, that was in Chandler.
in Chandler.
Right.
Okay.
And
She was still, see, at that time, kids would stay at home till the parents run them off or they got married.
actually, I'd already been to school. I went to nurses training at Enid, but then I kind of got hurt at lifting patients, and I came home to recuperate, and I needed money, and so I had to find a job here at home, and so that's how that came about. But we did the same things that they did growing up. We milked the cows and did the farming and the baling of the hay and all that stuff, you know.
Well, when you're younger, what were holidays like? What did you do? Did the whole family get together? Where would you go? Where would you have a celebration?
We would have it at my parents' house. I can always remember special times, especially Christmas or 4th of July and
Easter.
birthdays, Easter's. Yeah, always Easter. My brother and sister both lived in Tulsa. They had families nearly as old as I was. And they would always come home. And there would be room for all of them to stay in that old three-bedroom house that would just sleep on the floor, you know, or outside on the porch or wherever, you know, if it was summertime. And then my other sister lived over here on the highway, actually. They were close. Then my one brother was in California, so he wouldn't be here. But it was always special occasions. Everybody get together when he'd come home, of course, and have a big time.
Eat watermelon and fish out on that bench.
Yeah.
Right.
And, we always, every family get together, we'd have homemade ice cream. That was special.
And who would do the cooking?
My mother.
What would she cook?
A lot of times she would fry
everything.
chicken. She could cook anything, really.
She could. She was amazing.
She was a
cook.
good cook.
Cooked everything in grease.
And she
Everything in grease.
and she measured things like this. This much salt in the palm of her hand was a teaspoon, and she did this, and everything she just, or she would do like this. Can you imagine what I would have if I tried that?
Well, I remember when Mom and Aunt Mary would ask her for recipes. Well, I
And she'd
don't
say,
really know.
"Put some
Just come and
salt
watch.
Put some in there, and okay.
She just knew how to do it.
Yeah. And she raised chickens, and she'd go out and clean them, and she'd catch them herself and chop their head off, wring their neck, and then actually she'd pull their head off. She didn't pull their.
See, there's more family violence.
Yeah.
She would pull their head off.
Yeah, after she
Yeah.
wrung their neck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'd kill them first. And then she'd pluck them. She'd always try to get us to help her, but she could do it so much better. We didn't want to mess them up.
Sure.
Did you ever clean a chicken?
No, but I'm fascinated. My coworker will tell you, I'm fascinated with the stories of how people, kill
Did
and
that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Butchered a hog and
Oh, yeah.
skinned a chicken.
It-
Sure, I really am, and she's
Oh.
interviewing home demonstration agents, and I'm like, go into detail with them.
Yeah.
Well, on cleaning a chicken, it was kind of interesting. She'd have hot water and stick it in there and then pull the feathers.
Mhm.
And there would always be some pin feathers left. So she'd just build a little fire and burn those pin feathers off.
Yeah, just send them out.
Yeah.
But it really stinks when you're pulling the feathers off of a chicken.
Yeah.
You put them in that hot water, and those feathers do stink.
And she used to clean fish, and if there was a bit of meat left, she wasn't done with that fish yet. If somebody ended up with a bone in their fish, that was their problem. But she wasn't going to miss any
Yeah.
meat off of those fish. I'm the other way. I'd rather just fillet and be done.
Would your family butcher your own meat?
Yes, that's another story. We would have a gathering, and really we would have it at our place to butcher hogs, because my dad would always go cut some fresh trees to make a hanger to hang the hogs with, and set up some tubs and scald the water. You'd kill the hog, then you'd dip it in there and then scrape it. It was quite an operation.
Did you use a tub or a barrel?
A barrel, did I
Yeah,
say a tub? I meant a barrel, cut the top out of a barrel. And then, that was my mother's job. We had a smokehouse at our house, that's where the separator set too, but we had a smokehouse. And we would salt cure our own meat when I was a kid. And I would help do that as a kid. It was always fun, get in there, rub in that salt, unless you cut your hand.
And then it would hurt.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you ever smoke in the smokehouse?
No,
They just called it that.
they just call it smokehouse, right?
Something.
Yeah.
What separator? You said a
Milk
separator's
separator.
in there too.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
milk-
separated
yeah.
cream from the milk.
Did she make her own butter?
Yeah.
Did she?
And made her own cottage cheese. In fact, there was a guy,
I saw that face.
one of the guys from town, old Charlie Griggs, he's dead now, but he was my brother's friend, but he'd always wait on her to make cottage cheese. He'd walk out there from town to get to eat her homemade cottage cheese, really. It was pretty neat. And there's something else we ate when we were kids that it's really a shame that we don't have it anymore. But milk sours now is the way it's treated. But it don't sour till it's
Excuse me.
run through a process, It will clabber, and that's how you make cottage cheese. But clabbered milk and cornbread and fresh onions is better than a steak. And you can't knock it if you haven't tried it.
Right.
I'm
But-
gonna go
You
ahead and knock
can,
it.
you can knock it
Just
if
gonna
you've tried
start
it.
early.
It was choice eating it. You get a little bit of the thick cream off the cream and put on there with it. It was very, very tasty. Really.
Food is different today.
Oh, praise God.
But I miss that. I miss the clabbered milk and cornbread. Well, I ate cornbread and buttermilk. It's nearly, but it's not the same.
Any other favorite foods from back in the day?
Oh, ice cream was a
Not meatloaf.
no meatloaf.
I was so proud of the very first meal I made for him after we got married. And he had eaten meatloaf at school. One of his teachers made him eat the meatloaf at the lunchroom, and it made him sick. Well, I hadn't heard that story, and so after we were married, I made this meatloaf, and it turned out right, and I was so happy. And he came in there, he looked at that, and he said, "I don't eat meatloaf," and he just walked away. I thought, "Ooh, what have I done here?"
I'm gonna start over.
No, I couldn't stand it. It was bad.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't eat bologna for years and years. When I was, I think, a freshman in high school, we got to go to Wilson Packing Plant in Oklahoma City, and they honestly handled the bologna. It's bologna, but bologna, whatever, with wheelbarrows and scoop shovels. And no, it's no exaggeration. So I couldn't stand it. You'd watch them wheeling that stuff around. It was nasty. But I eat quite a bit of it anymore.
Well, after high school, and you got your dozer, I assume, after high school, what did you end up doing?
Well, I went to college 1 year. I got my degree in a hurry. OSU did me real well. They got me through in 1 year. And they said that was enough for me. But that's when I bought the bulldozer. We bought this farm where this house is and built this house. Actually, I moved twice in my lifetime. When we got married, we moved to town and lived on the wrong side of the railroad, but that's where we lived. And till we built this house, and then we moved here. And that's the extent of our moving. But we bought a few cows. Ann loved to milk, so I got her a milk cow. And when she'd get pregnant, she always insisted on doing the milking. But,
Yeah. It's not really how I remember.
oh, something like that. But we started raising beef cattle, and the dozer business was terrible. I mean, you ought to try to make a living with a dozer that you couldn't drive forwards, and the blades on the front end.
And we didn't have the truck. We didn't have any trucks
Well,
then.
we didn't have a truck to move it on.
So we had to road it wherever we went. And if you had to cross the highway with it, then I had to take tires and lay across the highway so he could go across the highway on those tires so it didn't cut the highway.
Wow.
Or we'd have to pay for
We
the highway.
really learned later, though, that you could just drive on across, it just barely mark it, and it didn't bother anybody.
As long as we didn't get caught.
Never did get caught.
You go sit on that hill and watch.
But anyhow, we struggled with that. We baled hay in the summertime and hauled hay. We'd do everything that was honest.
Bartered.
Yeah, we done quite a bit of trading. And
And you worked in the oil field.
worked in the oil field. In fact, I worked in the oil field of a night when we got the dozer.
That's right.
And I'd try to push dirt in the daytime with a wore-out bulldozer that I was usually working on. And finally, never did get it paid for, maybe still yet. But we got a chance to buy a better dozer, we thought. So I was actually up at my sister's and saw this dozer and thought, and we could arrange financing and got it. We bought this really nice looking dozer, really painted up good, brought it home, and boy, it would work for a day or two. Really worked good. And it worked pretty good for a while, but we got so far in trouble. We went bankrupt and didn't have enough sense to know it. And we just kept,
We did
kept
not
going.
file bankruptcy.
And we just kept digging holes and just going deeper and deeper in. And this was like in probably 1970, late 60s or 70s. We went backwards over $10,000. And that was all the money in the world. And I'm serious, we owed fuel, we owed back payments, we owed property payments, we owed everything we owned, we owed payments on. We was about to get repossessed. Everything but Ann and the kids was probably mortgaged. But anyhow, we worked, and the old bulldozer that we went backwards $10,000 was worth about $3,500 at that time, seriously. So how do you get out of a hole like that? This was something that won't run, and you just got a hole. So when it rained, I'd always go somewhere and look, see if I couldn't trade something or do something. Got to Oklahoma City and I found the international harvester dealer there that said, we could probably finance you a new bulldozer with your trade-in if you can get it released from the bank. Well, that sounded real interesting because I had kind of learned to run a bulldozer by then. And I think it was in 1968, really, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure. He actually had a bulldozer there that had a few hours on it that someone had caught on fire. They were going to rebuild it, so I could save lots and lots of money on it. A new bulldozer at that time was about $20,000. So I thought, boy, if I could get that for 15, I could run that 2,000 hours next year. That would get us caught up and make the payments on this dozer. So I went to the old banker. He was still alive. He said, "Yeah, you can do that." I said, "You'll do it." So we got the old dozer, released the mortgage on it, traded in for the new one that had been burned. It wasn't brand new. It had a few hours, but they rebuilt it real good. It was fixed up like brand new. Nobody could even tell the difference. Not even me looking at it. So I ran that thing, and so help me, I ran it 2,000 hours.
Got everything kind of caught back up.
Yeah.
Yep.
We could be at
That
zero again.
first year, I just sat in the seat of the bulldozer from daylight till dark.
He's not kidding.
And how would you find work?
Oh, there was lots of work to do, and I know a lot of people. I did then. I've always been bashful, but I get acquainted with people around, and I'd worked farm work ever since I was a little bitty kid. Ever since I was big enough, so I knew all the farmers needed dozer work, and we'd just go here and there. Bought an old truck in the meantime, and Ann always insisted on driving it too. So I had it parked out here by the barn one time, and it had a winch line on it. At that time, there wasn't no such thing as a lowboy trailer. You had to lower the front of the trailer to load the dozer. Well, if one of the kids got in or out, they'd bump it in gear. So I called her to come move me in this particular year. So she was gonna bring the truck, well, she didn't realize the winch was in gear, and every time you'd let your foot off the clutch, it just kept the winch getting tighter and tighter. Well, when it gets tight, the truck will not turn. She had the truck pulled up out here in the corner at the barn. Couldn't move it. She came and got me that day, and I thought that was pretty interesting. But she was a pretty good truck driver, really.
The things
Thanks,
you've
Jim.
done.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you've gotten Shirley stuck a couple times.
Oh my goodness. That the first dozer that he would run the tracks off of, when you're building the pond, you have to do some forward pushing in order to push the, and it would run the tracks off in the pond that you were building. And that's a nightmare. And yes, he's been stuck. He got some things stuck in the quicksand once, and we lost a dozer. I mean, it came up over the motor, everything. It was an outrageous thing. We almost totally lost it. And after it turned out to be such a job to get it repaired, we wish we'd just
Shut it down and
get it in there.
But we did have insurance then,
Yeah.
because it was a new dozer. That was about 1971.
At that
Yeah.
time, and you started doing any oil field, were you still strictly ponds at that
Still
time? Ponds and
doing
terrace.
ponds and farm. Actually, we were doing a development for the Carney banker at that time at Wellston, Jerry Wolf. And,
Got in some quick.
I'll tell you, the first old dozer, they had drilled a well down here. My parents was farming this place, so they had drilled a well there. And I got the job to get to fill the pit. Boy, I was excited. I think it's gonna pay $100. It was so exciting. You know, I could work a week and get $100 out of that old bulldozer. I got in there and you talk about getting stuck. I got stuck in that pit. And drilling mud is slime, you know, I mean, that's all it is. And you run a track off in the slime without another dozer to get it out of there. So I actually had a little bitty farm tractor, and I would shovel dirt on a little scoop and haul that mud out till I could get that track and get it broke and get it back on that dozer. We had to clean that pit out by hand. I did. It wasn't we, it was just me. But I learned a lot that way. That's what I said. I think I've got more than a college equivalent with equipment.
Oh yeah, I would say so.
But that was one of the interesting times we got stuck. One time with that same first dozer, I was pushing trees. I said my brother-in-law and sister lived over here on the highway. And I was pushing trees, and a tree, I didn't have a cab. I didn't think you needed a cab when I was young. So no top over me at all. I was pushing a tree and the wind was blowing real hard. I was pushing into the wind. So you kind of squint your eyes, you know. First thing I knew, there was a tree right across my lap. And this dozer sitting there spinning, pushing that tree. And I wasn't near this fat or I couldn't have breathed. But this tree was, it was about that big around. And it's sitting right across my lap. And the clutch, you have to push forward to make it stop. Well, the tree was on the clutch pushing it back. So I couldn't do nothing, so I could reach over and hit the throttle. I couldn't reach it, but I could kill it. I killed the bulldozer. I was sitting there, this pin, and someone called and needed me. I had an old truck at that time to move it. The same old winch truck she had a problem with. But they needed something at Carney with that winch truck that somebody had run out from under a trailer by chance, and thought I could pick it up for them. So she came over there to hunt me. And I'd sat there long enough. I didn't wet my pants or mess them or anything. I mean,
Jim,
but I'd sat there a
proud
long
of you,
time. But anyhow, it seemed probably a lot longer than it was. But she came down there, and I'd figured out how to get off it. She got kind of excited when she saw me sitting there in the trees.
Well, that was when she still liked you.
Yeah, when there was a tree across my lap, and I said, "Oh, I'm all right." You know, I said, "There ain't no problem." I told her what we could do to get me off, and we did. Actually, while I was sitting there, it knocked the muffler off in the process. So I did, have you ever had something just pressing on you to hold your breath just a little bit?
Not really.
You never lived till you just got where you just snubbed. But anyhow, that thing was just holding me there. I could breathe, but I couldn't take a real deep breath. So I waited till the muffler cooled. It was laying down there by my feet, and I could reach it. I've got it up there and propped it down in there by the side of me. And I could breathe deep then, so I was fine. But I couldn't get off. I was just there.
Some close calls.
Yeah.
There I am.
But that was just one of them. You know, there's
I was always afraid something would happen to him, you know, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I would go and check on him. And I went to check on him one time, and he wasn't on the dozer. The dozer was running, but he wasn't on it. And I thought, oh my gosh, what now? And he had gotten down, and he got inside the track, between the track and the dozer. He was so cold that he got in there and he was trying to warm his hands up. And
well, it was that year that we had to run all those hours. So any day that I could ride the dozer, I was going to be riding it. And it had a top on it, but no cab.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cold. And I got so cold, so I got down in there and I was getting warmed up for a break.
But he couldn't hear me calling him. And I went around the dozers, and I couldn't find him because he was down inside there, and like scared me to death.
Well, I was in the trees, so the wind wouldn't blow where I could get warmed up, you know.
Well, going back to the original Centennial Farm, the 160 acres,
Yep.
when it came into your possession, you were telling me that you did a lot of conservation efforts on that land. Why was that so important?
Well, my grandfather just farmed it up and down the hills or wherever. They didn't think about it eroding. They wasn't worried about the wind and the rain doing away with it. So I want to leave a legacy, possibly that every one of these farms we've got, that they'll be better when I die than they were when I got them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. If you're going to run cattle, you got to get grass, got something anyhow.
Yeah.
But I just like the idea. If somebody says something, say, well, that farm's better than it was when you got it.
Well, it was washing. He had to do something.
Yeah, it's eroding away.
It
It
was,
was just, the topsoil was mainly gone.
Well, how many acres do you now have total?
2,800.
That's a lot of land.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep up with all that land?
we hurry.
We hurry. Still go a lot of hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little easier now than it was before we retired.
Mm-hmm.
But we still run cattle on it. Keep up with it. I still, actually, after we sold the business, I bought me a new bulldozer. I have a new bulldozer sitting up here.
You just can't get away from the bulldozer.
Oh, that's right. I do love it. You know,
He said he
it's
still
fun.
plays in the dirt's what he tells me.
Yeah. You know, some kids, you know, you play in the dirt when you're a little kid, and some people grow out of it, but I never did.
Jim's grandmother, that was the Indian, she came from El Dorado. Her dad was a preacher, and he was killed. These two guys got in a fight over a dog, and he tried to step between them, and he got stabbed in the throat and died. And so she ended up with a stepdad, and so there's that whole family. We can't find out. I try to find out a lot of stuff with genealogy, and because of the Indian thing and the thing that her family disowned her and all that, we've had a terrible time trying to find her ancestors, you know.
Well, that is a serious looking family tree.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Actually, this
You
one
did an
is
awesome job
this
with
one is just Jim's grandpa. His grandpa is William, and he has the Centennial Farm. But then his dad homesteaded a place a mile south of here, and Jim's nephew owns it now. But I think that they sold it off for a few years in between them before they bought it back again. So it's not to the Centennial thing yet.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the bigger changes when it comes to farming from when you were growing up as a young boy to today?
Okay. Well, the first thing, of course, we went from horses to, and a tractor at that time was 25 horsepower. Well, the tractors today's a pretty small tractor at 100 horsepower. I mean, that's the main thing. The cab, heat and air on the tractors, you know, were spoiled. Fertilizer, we didn't have fertilizer when I was a kid to grow crops like we do now.
I think the trading really changed.
Yeah.
At that time, you'd help somebody else get their hay in, and then they'd come out.
That's right. There was, you know, like Oscar Nettles, the neighbor over here had the hay baler. We had the cutter. We would cut the hay, and he would bring his baler and rake. Or we had to rake. We had the cutter and the rake. We'd rake, cut it and rake it, and then he would bale it, and then we'd go do his, or vice versa, and go around. And the Amorites the same way. We would work with different neighbors, and like I guess I touched on. My folks didn't have a truck or a pickup. They'd haul feed in the back of the car, you know, cow feed, actually. But Roy Neal was a neighbor on the other side of Carney, but he had a truck that we haul our hogs and the cattle.
Oh, now there's a story.
Which one? Oh, loading the hogs. He had a hot shot one time when I was a little kid. My dad always complained they didn't have arthritis treatment. I thought then it was just to get by for him not to want to do something when he was getting older. But he had arthritis real bad and couldn't do a lot of things. And he never believed in building good corrals or pens or anything. And we just had kind of an old makeshift loading chute. And Roy Neal would come get our hogs. We were loading hogs that day. And he had a brand new hot shot, which no one had used around before then. But my dad and him would get in there and push the hogs up this old chute in the truck. And so he handed that hot shot to my mother, and he said, now when they get close, you hit them with that hot shot. But they was pushing a hog up there, one of the contrary ones, and she hit my dad with that hot shot. Now he loaded that hog. I guarantee you, with some choice words. He had a way with words there that we won't use. And that's something else I could tell you, going back to my childhood. It's kind of interesting. When we went to the state fair, it's where Douglas School is in Oklahoma City now. The state fair was. Mm-hmm. They would not permit. Well, probably the school buses wouldn't have made it that far, but we couldn't take a school bus to the fair. But when you got to be in the 7th grade, you got to go to the fair. So we would go in Roy Neal's stock truck.
Just load all.
He would actually wash it out.
Well, that's good. That was nice of him.
But he would load that old truck full of kids and take us to the fair.
The school wouldn't allow you to go on the school bus?
No.
But they would allow you to go on that farm?
That's right.
Nobody was so happy yet.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
And did you participate in FFA or 4-H?
Yeah, I was in 4-H when I was a kid, and then I was FFA. Actually, I was president of the FFA at Carney one time.
And show your...
Oh yeah, that's another thing too. That's really different from today. You was asking the different. Mm-hmm. When I was showing a particular steer, I would try to get, when the judge wasn't looking, rake stuff up under him so his belly would be closer to the ground. And then, you know, when our kids started showing, they would rake the stuff away and you want all leg. No. And the cattle have changed that much, you know. And kind of a strange thing, I bought some bulls last year, and they're honestly going back to the things like when I showed, for some reason, you know, I guess just to make a change. But they're going back to the shorter-legged animals.
You showed a Hereford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you still feel that sense of community within the farmers in the area? Do you all still help each other? Or?
No. Well, one thing, we're the only farm between Carney and Tryon now, where there used to be, every place had a farmer on it. Mm-hmm. And there's no one here to neighbor with, honestly. What few people that do still farm, we still neighbor with, but they're busy. They do their own thing. We do our own thing more now than we used to.
And they don't have crops the way the wheat, and then they have the hay, and that's pretty much all that's raised right through here now.
Found out it doesn't grow cotton good, you know. After they lost all of our topsoil and corn, you can grow it in the little bottom, but it's such small fields, it's not worth messing with. So if we just grow hay and wheat, and not even much wheat anymore. Actually, when Ann and I got married, we grew a lot of wheat. Actually, this was a wheat field around this house.
And when I was a kid, you still had some alfalfa.
Yes, we grew alfalfa, but the bugs eat it up here so bad now. So very few people grow that.
now you pasture your wheat.
Yeah.
You harvest it a little, but you still
Yeah.
pasture a little, and that's it.
But we learned, wheat farming for western Oklahoma, and we can grow it. Our cows can do real good on it if we get it in the pasture. So we do more good with Bermuda grass here than probably anything else. Like this field across the road used to be one of the bigger fields around here. It's about 40 acres. And, it's in grass now, so.
What are some of the challenges of being a farmer today? You notice your farming neighbors have kind of gone to the wayside, and
You have to
Well-
have a lot of land if you're going to farm. You
Yeah.
have to either be big or not at all.
Yeah.
Because
And,
you can't just farm a little bit and make a living. You just can't do that.
you still have people, varmints, coyotes, dogs, bobcat, maybe a long-tailed cat now and then comes through here. Last week we lost a calf, something ripped it open, so it had to be a cat. Then the next couple of nights later, coyotes or a dog got one. You can tell the difference the way they kill them. And we have them problems. And the expense of doing stuff, like, when we started buying, say, nice tractor, we could really buy a nice tractor when the cabs came out for $20,000 or even less. Now you buy a nice cab tractor, 100 horse, 125 horse cab tractor, it's $80,000 to $100,000. The cash flow is unreal.
The environmentalists have been
And the environmental.
real nightmare.
Oh, yeah,
The fertilizer and the weed kill that they have to buy now
yeah.
so much more expensive because there's the minutest, tiniest, itsy bitsy potential that field mice could one day have one ear instead of two if they don't use this particular brand. It's just gotten ridiculous about the environmental regulations for fertilizer and weed kill. And
Well, and for instance, this even happened in the 80s, kind of when it was getting started. They drilled a well over here on my parents' place in the early 50s. It was a good one. But instead of worrying about salt water, they just dug a big pit, dumped the water in the pit. Well, that killed about 10 acres over here. Well, I figured when they had an oil boom here in the early 80s, we might as well get that pit filled and make a few dollars out of it. So they got some of the pits that want to haul the drilling mud off, so I could charge $100 for them to dump some mud over here, making a few bucks. And doggone, one of the environmentalists followed them in here, and they fined us $1,000 at that time for dumping drilling mud in that salt pit. And they said, I really and truly, we could have gotten a lawyer and beat this, because the only thing that was bad in the drilling mud was the chromium that wore off of the drill pipe that they could prove. But, and can you, you probably saw them drill an oil well, there's pipe turning, and there's very little friction to where the side of the drill pipe, that's not where it wears. But that's what they said, they could find a trace of it here, so they find us. And at that particular time, it was $1,000 fine. And that was just kind of the starting of it,
Yeah, but
And then they said we had to, sorry.
Go ahead.
They said that we had to haul this mud and dispose of it. And we said, okay, so where do you dispose of it? There's no place to dispose it. It's illegal to dispose it.
Yeah.
But we had to haul it and dispose it somewhere. And you have to make up your mind, I either have to haul it and do something with it, but I can't do anything with it.
it
Didn't make sense.
And how good some of the rules are. They drilled a well out behind the house here. Honestly, we cut the pit when they got done drilling and spread the mud out there, and that's legal.
Now, I'm not sure I'm remembering this right, but down there at the salt pits, after you use the drilling mud, now it grows grass, right?
Oh, it does, yeah.
But prior to that, it was completely dead.
Yeah, it was, that's right.
So I would say the environmental regulations have been a nightmare for farming.
And of course, she's got the dozer service now. Where we mine the shale up here, that's a mining operation. We don't just dig clay off the hill, it's a mining operation.
And it's our dirt, we own the property, but we can't haul that off without paying the state a fee because it's a mining operation. So we have to
And you have
pay
to file a
them.
reclamation
So we
law.
Yes.
get tired of the rules and regulations,
Well, As far back as you can remember, has there been a lot of oil drilling on the properties?
Not a whole lot, but there's been a little bit.
A little bit.
Mhm.
And those royalties are still with the family?
Mhm.
Okay.
Most of it. Most of it.
Okay.
On the Centennial Farm, there's an oil well up there.
And we don't have minerals under it.
Hmm.
My uncle kept it. His daughter's got it.
Well, tell me a little bit about your kids. How many kids you have? What
Well,
they're doing now?
We've got 4. The oldest one's a son, and Pam, and Julie, and Mary. Jim Ed is actually working for us right now. He's working the farm, kind of managing it, helping us. Pam, we sold the dozer business to. Julie is married to a preacher, has got 4 little boys, and they live down by Norman. Too bad, you know, that's kind of in bad country.
We send them a lot of orange clothing.
That's
A
good.
lot of
Then
orange
our
clothing.
youngest daughter, Mary, is married to a farmer that lives west of Carney, about 10 miles. No man's land over there on a real good creek, but you just can't get there from here.
We have
Yeah.
15 grandchildren.
Oh my goodness gracious.
And 4 grades.
Yes, that's true.
So Pam, do you get up in the dozer and get dirty?
Nope.
Or you just manage?
I manage. I get dirty occasionally, but I don't operate the equipment. I know what it'll do, but I don't do it. No, I go and get the jobs and then just get the guys out on them.
Okay.
I don't care if we had a female operator, but it doesn't come up much.
Yeah, it's
Not
probably not many in the business, I would guess.
Once in a while we have a woman truck driver. Or she does.
Well, it
I
was
don't do
you
anything-
whenever y'all
I
had
don't do
it.
anything anymore.
We've only had it for 3.5 years. We bought them out 3.5 years ago, so that's why it's a we and a still.
So, what's retirement been like?
I'll
Oh,
tell you, it's a killer.
I can warn you, don't bother retiring. You
Well,
will work yourself to death.
we have this farm and we run a lot of cattle, and it got behind while we were in the business. Let a lot of things go that we're still working at catching up. And it really, really is tough now. We have a trike, a motorcycle trike, that needs to be ridden pretty
A
regular.
lot.
And the farming cattle operation really gets in the way of it.
They also do some real estate development, and they've still got some oil properties.
Mhm. I don't know if you noticed Kinder Wells in Perkins.
That's
Yeah.
the-
Oh, yeah.
Where the Williams grocery store
The
is.
development? Mm-hmm.
That's our development. So then we got one with Pam over at Four Corners. Got one south of Carney and one west of Four Corners. So we stay rather busy.
And then all of us kids use them on a consulting basis. So we drag them out of the house pretty regular for that.
So, where are holidays today? Here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good.
Yes, that's why we need all this space here to feed everybody.
I
That
could
space
tell
in
you
there.
kind of a funny about this house. This used to be 3 rooms, so you see what it is now. We tore the walls out. One time Ann's friend was down in Florida, so she needed to go check on her. So while she was gone, that was 2 rooms in there. So when she got back, it was 1.
And I
She was excited.
Ooh,
It was.
she was a little excited, all right.
I was
Dad
excited.
didn't mention that he didn't throw down plastic or anything as he took the wall out. She had knickknacks everywhere.
Well, I put them up. I put them in that back bedroom.
Oh, I
I don't
never.
remember it like that.
I never found the things that were in that one room that he did away with. I don't know what happened to all that stuff, and he doesn't know.
But it sure made
You
a
dug
lot
a pit.
nice big living room.
But it's a nice, yes. We can get all the grandkids and the kids and stuff.
Well, I want you to think back, all 3 of you, to one of your favorite family stories that you haven't shared with me today. It could be from when you were little. It could be from when you were first starting out. It could be when you really got stuck. It could be anything you like, just to share with us. And we can
Well-
start with whoever first.
Go ahead, I'll think.
Well, I'll tell you one. I'm pretty quiet myself, but I'll put one in. Once when I was a little kid, a lot of times we'd take turns. Grandma and Grandpa just lived across the way, and we'd walk down there. We'd take turns getting to spend the night. It'd be our turn, and whenever there's 4 of y'all, little, doing anything by yourself was pretty exciting. I'd gone down there and Grandpa was going to go fishing. Well, his version of going fishing was he had a little fold-up cot and a cane pole, and we went down there and he wanted a nap. That's what he wanted. But we'd leave out the back door, and it was a pretty fair walk to the pond. When that screen door slammed behind you, he turned to me, or when it slammed behind me, he turned to me and he said, "Shh, you'll scare the fish." And I was to keep my mouth shut all the way to the pond. And I don't know why we always argued to get to go with Grandpa fishing, because that was a standing rule. When that door slammed, shh, you'll scare the fish. That's how he kept all those little kids from chattering the whole time. There were plenty of them.
I have a favorite story about him, though I don't know any other stories. That he and his nephew is the same age he is. And that's one of the reasons he calls his mom Granny. But anyway, they all went down to the pond. Granddad Kinder went down there and went swimming, and he got naked to do that. And so Jim and Dick went down there and gathered up his clothes and threw them in the pond.
Oh, no.
And then they came back to the house, and woo, he was so upset. So he had to come back up to the house naked. So he came up that kind of little draw, you know, and got up to the house. And of course, Jim had gone to his mom and wanted her to protect him from Dad. Dad was going to see to him when he got there, but Granny didn't let him. I think he went off and hid somewhere.
Yeah, I did.
Till Grandpa cooled
till
off
Grandpa
just a little
calmed
bit.
down, yeah.
Well, I guess there was a big fish in that pond. I don't know what happened to his clothes. We just threw them out there a little ways, and he couldn't find them.
Funny how those things happen.
Yes,
It
yes.
All right, Jim, you're on the spot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something a little outstanding, but I don't know. Something that we haven't already talked about, probably.
What about Aunt Marguerite and trading out work for lunch?
Oh, yeah. My uncle over at Meridian, after I got a dozer and I could get it to work, I was over there. I'd always go over there and work about a week in the winter, and it'd get cold, but my uncle would always come get me for lunch, and I hate beans with a passion. I just don't like beans. Well, I didn't used to, yeah, but at that time I didn't. They was about as bad as meatloaf. I just didn't eat them. That's all she had was beans and cornbread that day. And boy, I was starving to death. And it, you know, in the winter you just eat more. So I went up there and I ate beans and cornbread. It was good. I mean, I just had to enjoy it a little. Didn't like it, but I enjoyed it because it filled me up. Went back to work. We didn't have, she was a real good cook, but that next year I went back to do some more work. She told Ed, she called her, I think that day, and said, "Oh, I'm cooking a big bowl of beans again today. You know, Jim loved them so well." Said, "I know he loved those beans. I'm fixing him some more." That was kind of a funny story. So I enjoyed him again.
You had to be nice.
I did. I'm very polite. Always.
Or something.
Very careful
Yeah.
how I say things.
Well, is there anything? Well, do you have anything?
We haven't talked about gardening and canning and all that.
Go for it.
Did your mother have a big garden?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
A real big garden. She always gardened lots.
And she was good at it. And she raised lots and lots of stuff, and she canned a lot of stuff. They had this cellar, and she would can all of these things. Well, now by the time I got Jim, then Granny and Dad were by themselves. But every year she did that anyway, and then the next year she would pour that stuff out. Or actually, it wasn't the next year. She had like 3 rows of stuff, and each year she would pull that next one up to here, and the back one up to there, and then new canned goods back here. Well, then she'd throw out the oldest year and use those jars to can in again. And I always thought, man, that is a lot of hard work. You know, and then she just threw them away the next year. But she just loved doing that kind of thing. And I always thought, that's more trouble than I need.
Were there fruit trees on the property? Or
Few, not very many fruit trees.
We did the plums and grapes.
Peaches.
And
peaches.
There were peaches? I
Yeah.
don't remember
Yeah,
that.
they didn't do too good, but they had
Oh.
some peach, couple peach
I don't
trees.
remember that.
Well, your work was quite a partnership, and you worked a lot. So what did you do for fun?
Work.
Fun. We were married 12 years before we ever took a break and left the farm. That was the first vacation that we ever took. And
Boy, it was a good one. Where were we going now?
we went to, we actually went to the bulldozer yard in Woodward. And we spent the night there, and Jim bought a bulldozer on the way while we were going, we went to
Colorado.
Colorado. And then when we came back, we got the bulldozer and brought it on. But we actually went and spent the night. At that time, we had this little fold-down camper thing, and that's
Well, we had to have a place to park it,
well, and we couldn't
and it
afford
was safe there, you know.
and we couldn't afford to take all the children and go on vacation to the motels and places to eat and all that stuff. So this was our way to do it. So now when Jim says, or if anybody says to me, do we want to camp? A lot of the people on the motorcycles camp. Not I. No, we will stop at a motel. And I hated camping. It was hard work. So that was our break, but it was hard work.
So you got married when? What year?
62. We've been married 48 years.
Okay, do the math. Okay.
Last week, and Jim bought me this dozen roses. They're beginning to wear out right now, but they have been gorgeous. So, 48 years, that's a long time.
That's a long time.
She's lucky.
I still don't have
She wakes
any
up
children.
every morning and says that I'm so
Yeah,
lucky to have
yeah.
you.
Yes, yes, every morning, and then again in the evening I say that.
Might not in those words.
Oh,
But you knew the meaning.
yeah.
So where did you get married? Where?
At the farm where I grew up.
On the
We got married. We had a doorway like this, and all my brothers and sisters and I got married in that doorway. And we put the flowers up around the doorway like that and made a thing. Preacher stood on this side, and we stood in the doorway, and then all the people were back behind that.
That's a good tradition.
It was really. Actually, I said all of the brothers and sisters, but my youngest brother, of course, when he got married, his wife got to choose where they were going to get married, and they got married at church. So, but all the rest of us got married there.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't spoken about today? Anything you want to throw in?
I don't know. I was.
During the 1930s, was there anything in particular that the farm did to?
That's for my time.
Well,
Well,
but you would have
The
heard.
stories.
Do you not know what your mom and dad said?
They had it hard, really. I mean, they really did.
One thing I
That's
remember
one-
about them having it so hard is my grandmother. Even when I was a little girl, she had one drawer in her kitchen. When she had store-bought bread by that time, you know. Whenever she was done with the bread, she would dump that plastic baggie out, and she'd rinse it in the sink, and she'd lay it over her dish drainer. And once it was dry, she'd fold it up neatly and put it in that drawer. And she had a drawer plumb full of those Wonder Bread bags, you know, with the big old circles on them. And she'd do it with the butter tub. Never would she throw anything away. And so as we got a little older, you would have a vacation Bible school project or anything, and then need coffee cans or butter tubs or anything. We'd go to the older ladies like Grandma or somebody in the church, and they would have those gathered up because they threw nothing away. She'd save her bacon grease. And she'd
And
cook it.
the twisty ties off the bread thing. She had a kitchen drawer full of those little pieces of string, you know, that came off of something. She would save those little pieces of string.
And that was a big
It was
old deep
amazing.
drawer, and it went way back in the cabinet. And you'd slide that out, and there'd be the bread bags all folded, and the twist ties in a little butter tub, and then a stack of butter tubs. And then she had another cabinet that was plumb full of butter tubs and coffee cans, and they were going to
Saved
be
everything.
prepared. They were going to be
And
ready for the next time things were
When
that
I was a
bad.
kid, we'd get feed, especially chicken feed, would come with flowery printed sacks, and she'd cut them up and make quilts, and the neighbors would get together and they'd come to our house, quilt. That was pretty neat. Play domino.
a time or two, I remember some of the quilts she made also were from her curtains.
Yeah.
The curtains that hang on the west
Yeah.
side and get faded a little bit, and
Yeah.
she'd make new curtains, and then she'd use those for the quilt, and you could see
Yeah.
the kitchen curtains in your quilt.
Special
Quilted
memories.
in the wintertime.
Mm.
She'd say if she quilted in the wintertime, it kept her warm while she was quilting it, and kept her warm when she was done.
Yeah.
But we were, even when we were little kids, it was still pretty broke out here. Everybody was broke. We didn't think anything about it because all
Well,
the neighbors were too.
I said
We-
go
Go
ahead,
ahead. No.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
When we got electricity, there was one light upstairs in each room. There was 2 rooms. Actually, the old house is still down there. There was 3 rooms upstairs, and the 3rd room was never finished. I don't know why,
And
but
Clark.
it was junk rooms, I guess, until they started putting junk in it before they finished it. But we had a lot. You talk about cold. That old upstairs, we didn't have a bit of heat up there, so that's where the boys, or where I always slept. You just keep piling more covers.
Does snow ever blow in?
No, it was tight enough to keep snow out.
And to get dressed to go to school in the morning, you'd hustle downstairs, or
You're not kidding. You would get
Step
downstairs
lively.
pretty fast.
When
Pretty fast.
When I was growing up, where we were, we didn't have vehicles. Grandpa and Grandma lived down to the corner south of us, and my other grandparents actually, my other grandparents just lived 2 miles away, and I still didn't meet Jim. I don't know, but anyway, we had to go back and forth with team and wagon, and we didn't have a vehicle, and we would go to Tryon to do our trading and stuff, sell the cream and eggs and things, and buy whatever groceries we were going to get.
and now there's not much there, is there?
No,
Was Tryon more happening than Carney at that time?
not at that time.
Okay.
They were both booming. Like Tryon
They
had
were.
2 cotton gins. Carney had 3 at one time.
And
Had a
hardware,
Had a
movie theater?
hotel in both of them.
hardware stores.
Yeah,
and
hardware
groceries.
stores in both of them. 2 or 3 grocery stores. Lumberyard in both towns. There was a lumberyard in both towns when I was little, but
There was still one
There
in
was
Tryon
still a
when I,
lumberyard,
when
yeah.
I
Yeah.
came along.
yeah. Well, when
Carney
we
did
built
that.
this house, we got all the material at Tryon.
And I have to ask, was there a public library in either one?
There is at Tryon.
Now.
Yes.
It was there then.
They just opened one.
Well, it's probably been 10 or 15 years, but
Has it
not when we first. There was a library at school, at both schools, and
And
it was
grown-ups
a pretty
could
good
check
one.
stuff out too.
Right.
Didn't have to be a student. The grown-ups could check out at the school library when I was little.
Any home remedies?
Oh, Jim's grandma would go out and get the one we told you was an Indian. She would go out and gather the herbs and things, and she would put them in the cellar, and
Yeah.
keep those for medicinal purposes. There was a
Grandma
lot.
Kinder thought camphor-phenique cured everything. There was nothing a little camphor-phenique couldn't fix. That was way later.
There was nothing. What?
Camphor-phenique
Oh yeah.
couldn't finish.
And we had the old guy that would come by peddling. What was it?
I don't know. That just went right through.
Chlorine salve.
Yeah,
I'd sell it when I was a
yeah.
kid. But the Raleigh man, he
Yeah.
would come by and sell spices and remedies. We'd have that stuff when I was a kid.
And how often would he come through?
Oh, once a month maybe. Pretty regular.
Do you know castor oil? You know what that is? That is a really good remedy for disciplinary problems.
Where are y'all from?
My mother used to use that for.
I'm from the hills of Tennessee, North Carolina, that area.
Really?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm from Miami, Florida.
Oh,
That's
wow.
probably worse, isn't it?
Snuff had amazing things for bee stings. I just remember that as a kid.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you got bee
Oh.
sting, you had to have
Well,
snuff.
Mom said her grandma used to use tobacco, chewing tobacco.
Right,
before
and they would chew that and put that on your hand. I put my hand up in the barn once, and yellow jackets stung all over my hand, and they put that stuff on there. Honestly, it took out the sting. It really did.
With all the train tracks going through, hobos come through it all.
Well, my mother used to feed them regular. They swore that there was a mark on the railroad down there by their house because they were just a little way. Actually, the railroad track was right there by that tree. I mean, that power pole. here, and it wasn't much farther where I grew up, right down here, just a little bit farther, but those hobos would be there all the time.
Would she put them to work?
There was one they told me about that they worked regular, but I mean for a while, but most of them wouldn't work. She'd feed them and they'd go on.
Did you ever hop on the train and go anywhere?
No, but we did play on the old push cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did they take the train out? Or when did it start?
Yeah,
coming
in the
through?
late 70s, I believe.
Yeah, Jeanette and I
Yeah.
played on it quite a bit,
Yeah.
so that would have
I
been.
believe it was late 70s.
And they took
I'll tell you a funny story after we built this. No, it was after, when did we build this house? 60. Something.
63.
60.
We had a preacher and his wife was a blonde. I'll tell this story on a blonde Joe. This old railroad was over here and they had abandoned it then, but it was still there. She had heard of snipe hunting. Have y'all been snipe hunting? You've never lived. I shouldn't tell the story. You'll get to go someday. But they came out to visit us, and they had a young family, and she was, and I was telling her, oh, it's fun. Said, if you'll go over here, I said, this is a pretty good place here on this old railroad. You can sit right there on that rail, get you a little stick, just tap that rail or tap that tie where you're sitting, and call them, say, come here, snipe,
And
come
hold
snipe,
your,
and
you have
hold
to
your
hold the
bag out, you
so
know,
they can.
and said, you'll get them in a little bit. She didn't ask what they looked like. So I said, the rest of us will go drive them in to you. So here she sits, tapping that rail. Here, Snipey, here, Snipey. And here we just come on back to the house, you know. It was just having us a big time. She sat over there and we finally had to go get her. If there is a snipe, I don't know what it is, so I've never saw one.
Well, I'm glad that I don't think we'll ever go snipe hunting. Now I know.
If somebody takes you snipe
That's what I say,
hunting,
it wasn't
just
fair to
leave
tell
and
you.
lead them back to the house.
It wasn't fair to tell you that, but it was so funny. She was serious. She'd sit there and tap that so gently, just barely tapping it. Just, here, Snipey, here, Snipey. Oh.
Anything else? Anything else you guys would like to add?
I don't think. I think that's pretty much it. The guy who homesteaded the place, William, I forgot how many children they had. Give me 1 second here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 kids. They had 9 children. No wonder the house was full and the big boys had to sleep in the barn.
Oh yeah.
And I thought y'all would ask why we decided to stay here and do this.
Yeah. Well, why did you?
Because we were too poor to do anything else.
Yeah, listen to that.
So we just had to stay here.
Well, it's not a bad
Yeah.
life.
And
now it's been good.
our last question usually is what do you see it for the next 100 years? How do you see?
I'm going to heaven. I don't know what they're going to do here, but I'm going to heaven.
You mean actually the farmstead?
Mm-hmm.
I really think that one of our grandsons is enough interested in this to keep it together. Hope so. He's shown quite a bit of interest, and he's said so a time or two that he would like to somehow, and he's capable. And I think that'll happen.
Another reason not to retire, quite retire.
Right.
Well, that's a good reason not to till he's ready.
Right.
But too many people retire, sit down and die. And, you know,
And there's a lot of things to do.
I'll soon be
yet,
70
really.
years old, and I don't think I'm 70 years old age-wise. I mean, I hurt and ache and get tired a lot more awkward than I used to be. But far as quitting at 70 years old, I don't think that's the right time to quit. For me. Might be somebody else, but not me. There's too many things I need to get done. There's lots of cedars still around here that I've got to get rid of. A few gullies yet to shape. And one of my grandsons, it was a big highlight this past Christmas break. He's going to OSU, and he was out long enough to bring one of Pam's dozers, and we built a big pond up on the north place here. So that's exciting to get to work with our son and our grandson, you know, and our son's here working now. So And that's neat, really.
So it's definitely staying in the family.
Yeah.
Yes. When they first moved here, they kind of came in groups. You know, the all the people would get together and move here. You know, so but Jim's all those children that I told you about, the 9 children, 3 of them married brothers and sisters, and 1 of them married a cousin. So all of the Kinders married Calgers.
Except my dad.
Yeah, and he married a Starks. But anyway, I thought that was really something that so all of those kids are double cousins because their moms and dads are
Related.
yeah. I thought that was funny.
Well, then, what's around you is what you know, and yeah.
Right. I knew all of Jim's aunts and uncles. I went to church with his aunt that had her arm blown off, and as I was growing up as a little kid, I went to church with her, and his Uncle Tom drove my school bus. And he was my Uncle Tom, same time he was Jim's. You know, all us kids called him Uncle Tom. And so when I married him, you know, I already knew some of his people. So
It's just a small world.
Yeah.
it is.
It took the movie theater to get you together.
That's right. Actually, my sister was dating one of his friends.
Well,
And
the
they-
one that I went to the movies
And
with.
they introduced us my little sister introduced us. I've been mad at her.
Well, we appreciate your time today, and
Thank you for coming. This
Oh,
has
yeah.
been-
we appreciate you telling us some stories of your life and your farms, and we thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.
Thank you
It
all
was
for
lots of
coming.
fun. I appreciate you coming.